Hi everyone, this is Professor Benjamin, and we have finished almost week one of this course. It flies by. So due by Sunday, 11:59 is your quiz on chapter one. So what I highly suggest you do is read the chapter, keep your book open, and then one of the biggest things about taking open book tests is organization. So knowing where to find things in the chapter is really helpful. So you'll have about 45 minutes, and there's about 20 some questions on the quiz. Some of the questions actually pertain to the syllabus, so have the syllabus ready. And that's my cue to make sure that you've read the syllabus. Okay, so we're through week one. A lot of you did a great job on your posts. So a lot of people followed the requirements, 300-word initial post, paragraphs, citations, etc. A lot of you, and then they also made the response post that was required to a fellow classmate. Now, a lot of you maybe made the initial post, forgot the response post, or even your initial post and your response didn't meet the requirements for this class. So here's what I need you to do. Over the weekend, take a good chunk of time to read the requirements for the course, which can be found under the course information session, which is this first one. There's examples of both initial posts and response posts in these documents, so make sure you read those, okay? The other thing is that moving forward for the next 3 weeks, we're covering 2 sessions a week. So you really need to use this weekend to read the material and comprehend the material to make informed posts, which will be due on Tuesday by 11:59 for session 2 and session 3. Okay, so you have a pretty good chunk of work coming up this week. So time management is going to be essential for your success. All right, so if you look here, Session 1 is what we did this week. You completed the forum and the response post. You have a quiz due by Sunday night, 11:59, okay? And then you can see here, we're going to cover Session 2 and Session 3 this week. So by Tuesday, 11:59, you will have due a forum post for Tragedy of the Commons, and you will have also due a forum post for Ethics, Economics, and Policy. Remember, they are due by Tuesday, 11:59. Your responses are due by Thursday, 11:59. So if you're not clear on those dates, please go back and watch the video on the homepage and read the syllabus to understand that the due dates, while the due dates in the system look like they say Thursday, you have a component of that assignment always due on Tuesday by 11:59. So put an alarm on your phone or something that will help you alert you. Now, here's the thing moving forward too. In your first initial posts that were due this week, you could use the word I because a lot of the questions dealt with you. From this point forward, your initial posts cannot use the word I. So no, in my opinion, I believe, I think. Now, while the questions seem like they may be asking an opinion, you can give an opinion without using I, in my opinion, I believe. You just say yes. And the reason that this answer is yes is because X, Y, and Z from the article. Okay, so you make sure that you don't have an I in your initial posts from this point forward. Now, your response posts are something different. You can say I in your response post, but initial posts, no I statements in initial posts. Okay, so this session we're going to cover Session 2, Tragedy of the Commons, and we're going to cover Session 3, which is Ethics, Economics, and Policy. Now, there will be a lot of reading, and I understand that you have a lot of other things going on in your life. So if you need to, and you need to just read information that relates to the answer that you're going to post, that is okay, but you're going to need to make sure that over spring break you go back and read all the rest of those documents to get yourself through, because you will see all of this material pop up on the midterm and final exam. Okay, so important in Tragedy of the Commons. I love Tragedy of the Commons because this encapsulates all environmental problems that are going on in the world today. Now, this article here, The Tragedy of the Commons by Garrett Hardin, seems like a really hard article to read, but when you really break it down, it's really not hard. And I know he uses population as an example, but if you took population out and plugged in any environmental issues such as pollution of the air, pollution of our oceans, use of water, use of land. If you took if you took population out and plugged any of those scenarios in, that is what Tragedy of the Commons is destruction of any shared resource, okay? So that article, Tragedy of the Commons by Garrett Hardin, is actually a rebuttal to an article that was written in the 1800s by William Foster Lloyd, who talked about the grazing scenario in a pasture. And he talks about how we look for our short-term gain because we have an inherent need for greed rather than looking at the long-term interests of society. And so what William Foster Lloyd proposed was this idea of privatization, that if we privatize the land, people will take care of it, because if you own something, you're more likely to take care of it. But Garrett Hardin years later writes a rebuttal and says, listen, that's a technical solution to the problem. And he goes on in his article, and you'll see this in all the sections of the article. He talks about all these different technical solutions that were proposed, such as the welfare state, mutual coerciveness, so coerce people to do good with fines, pollution. So the same thing, we coerce businesses through fines to not pollute. The other thing is privatization. He talks about privatization in national parks. He says these are all technical solutions to the commons problem, but while they look like they work, they really technically never work, because we really need an extension in morality. We need some sort of other aspect to technical solutions that makes us educated, makes us aware of what we're doing. And it may be that responsibility aspect, so educating us about our responsibility to take care of nature. Okay, so you're going to read this article, and as you're reading, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, he's only talking about population control. But in reality, you could take that population out and plug into it any scenario with Tragedy of the Commons, and it'll be about any environmental problem currently harming us. Okay, so take a look at that article. The other articles are about invasive species. So invasive species are when people bring them in for that short-term gain, and they don't think about their long-term interests, like they like a new fish or they like a new plant, but they forget about how it's going to take over society. That is what invasive species are. And then we move to ethics, economics, and policy. Now, pricing the priceless, this is another long article, and it talks about we use a process called cost-benefit analysis to determine whether we should put a policy into effect. And this article will talk about all of the problems involved with cost-benefit analysis. And the reason is we try and put a monetary value on human life, on the environment, etc. Okay, because that's what we relate to. We relate to money. We relate to that consumer side. If we left it up to the citizen side of us, nothing would ever get done. Okay, so that article, while it's long, it talks about the pros and cons to cost-benefit analysis. It also talks about that a solution to cost-benefit analysis, instead of using that, would be cap and trade. And here are some articles about cap and trade. This is a wonderful little video that talks to you about pollution trading. It's like trading credits on a stock market. Okay, excuse me. Then we actually talk about environmental injustice, which is a great topic. In fact, someone actually had that posted about an article with Mike Pence and how he has contributed to environmental injustice and environmental racism in the United States, and I thought that was a great article because we're going to talk about it this week. Okay. The other question in here talks about intrinsic and instrumental value. So intrinsic and instrumental value is really a difficult situation. So this is talked about in the textbook. Instrumental value is the value that we place on something because it gives us something. So like we place a value on trees because the trees give us paper or they build houses. Intrinsic value is value unto itself. So that means that a tree would be worth the same value as a human life. Okay, and I know a lot of people are like, no way, bacteria shouldn't be worth the same amount as humans, but aren't we all part of nature? So the problem is technically a lot of times we as humans think we're not part of nature, when in reality we are part of nature, and we all should have the same value. Okay, so we should all look at the earth as one. And we kind of moved away from this intrinsic value of nature, which used to exist a lot of times in religions that are not monotheistic religions, one God religions, religions that thought of nature as a whole. When we moved away from that, we kind of moved away from that intrinsic value of nature and actually moved to more thinking about nature with instrumental value, meaning only what does nature give us, that's the only value it has, rather than the fact that a tree has value unto itself. Okay, so it's a difficult concept to understand. The other question that's under there, we'll talk about how our detachment from nature has occurred, and this answer can also be found in the textbook. And a lot of people shy away from the religious aspect of it because, you know, they don't want to kind of, maybe they're a religious in their own world, and they really don't want to kind of bring tarnish to it. But technically, when we moved from a more animalistic or animism type religions to monotheistic religions, which is one God religions, we actually took the idea that nature has value unto itself and put it into man. So God, right? We put the fact that God created nature, which means that man has dominion over nature. Okay. The other thing is we said, you know, we say God created nature with just a wand, or we'll say that, you know, God should be taking care of nature. While that's a great term, we also kind of say, we remove ourselves that nature actually plays a role. And so this is a big kind of controversial topic for a lot of people. The other thing is, you know, a good example is this, like, you know, if a storm passes us, my mom will say, oh, thank God that storm passed us. But then I'll come back to her and I'll talk to her about the scientific reasoning behind it. Well, this low front came in and pushed this high pressure system out of the way, and because that's the nature aspect of it, but she's looking at that God's the one who had control over nature. And when we believe in those monotheistic religions, we put our onus in God over nature, and that has caused us a little bit to become detached from nature, or become detached. Now there's other reasons too, like technological advances. When we domesticated plants and animals, that means we have control over them. So there's a lot of other reasons, and your textbook talks about all of these reasons, okay? And so I don't want you to think that I'm kind of against monotheistic religions or anything like that, but it is a reason why we have become detached from nature. So we need to talk about it in this class, okay? So I think you're going to have fun with the readings this week. I know you're going to be worried that you're going to become bogged down with the information. So if what you need to do is read the specific informations that helps you develop a really good initial forum post, and then go back and reread some of that information over spring break, do it. But the problem is what I worry about is if I tell you you don't have to do the readings, you're not going to go back and read them over spring break. And then what's going to happen is when it comes time for the midterm exam preparation, you're going to be really bogged down with a lot of work to do. So I want you to think about your time management and how you can handle it in this week coming up. Now, don't forget, at the end of next week, you also have a quiz due on the Ethic and Economics chapter, so February 26th, Sunday by 11:59. And if you look here, Tragedy of the Commons, there is no quiz associated with it, okay? So by Sunday, 11:59 this week, you have a quiz due on Chapter 1. Next week coming up, you have an initial post due for Session 2 and an initial post due for Session 3 by Tuesday, 11:59. You have response posts to fellow classmates to their posts due by Thursday, 11:59. And you have one quiz due by next Sunday, February 26th by 11:59 on Chapter 2 of the textbook. Okay? I'm always available. Feel free to reach out. I've made a lot of comments on your initial posts. Make sure you read them, and I look forward to your submittals this week. Have a wonderful couple days until I'm back in touch with you again.